Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, we are getting fearless with our photography. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Welcome, all of you beautiful photo friends. Oh my gosh. Today, we have a wonderful episode. I hope that your summer is off to a great start. I know for me, I'm actually getting ready to take my first flight in more than 16 months to go visit some family in California. So I'm like really excited to do this, and since I don't get to do this as often as I'd like, I'm going to be taking a lot of photos, focusing on moment, focusing on connection, just those photos that, you know, you don't typically get when you get a bunch of family together. So the other part is that like, one of the reasons why I switched to Fuji a number of years ago was so that I can be more of a fly on the wall, so that I'm not as obtrusive when I take a photo of somebody, because I do want to be more connected in that moment. And at the same time, with it being family, I also don't want to take away time from the family just to edit the photos that I'll be taking, one by one. But I also don't want to wait until I get home to edit them all. So, personally, after more than 10 years shooting professionally, one trick I use to speed up my editing is simply using Lightroom presets. I don't just mean the presets that are, built into Lightroom. These are presets that I've created after editing. Uh, I'd probably estimate more than 100,000 professional photos to be delivered. That's not even like, my personal collection. Now, some of the presets that I have, they're subtle. Some of them are very creative and out there. But the point is that each of these presets, they simply provide a base to work off of. And that base is, 90% of the work for each of those photos. It's adjusting the color temperature, the contrast, the shadows, the colors, making your yellows a little bit less orange, making your greens a little bit bluer, those types of things. It's that base that takes up 90% of the work that you do on every single photo, so that then you can just make simple tweaks to be finished and then get back to family time. So I'm really excited about that, to be able to allow me to be a part of the moment, capture the moment, create the moment within the photo, share the moment, and then get back to enjoying that family time. So if you want, I want to give you my 52 Lightroom presets. These are my favorite presets that I use just to speed up my editing. So if you want to speed up your editing and create photos that are memorable and maybe a little bit creative, then again I want to I want to invite you to download my 52 favorite Lightroom presets absolutely free. You can grab those. Just head over to freephotographypresets.com and you can grab those free Lightroom presets today. Speed up your editing, get more creative photos, and get going. So that's it. Now this week I'm excited about this one. I left refreshed after this interview. It is with Huy Nguyen, and today we're talking about more authentic and how to be more fearless with your photography to capture beautiful and unique images. Now, I keep bringing this up because Huy is the founder of Fearless Photography, which is a website. It's a website kind of for couples looking for a fearless or less than traditional photographer to capture their unique wedding days. And I'll be honest, it is one of my favorite sources for inspiration before shooting a wedding. So I know that you are going to love this one. So with that, let's go ahead and get on into this interview with Huy Nguyen. Huy, do you remember the first photo you took that like really stood out to you?
I do. And yeah, now that you asked me, I do remember that photo. It was a it was like a photo from my university when I was just starting out, and I got this angle of kind of above, and there's like a row of it must have been graduation or some kind of ceremony. There's a bunch of white dressed up ROTC type, kind of like
Hmm.
wearing naval whitish outfits. Maybe there was something else, but I remember they're all uniform and they all had hats on, and I thought the pattern was really cool. It was black and white film, so it was like a row of white, like 4 rows of white. So I don't know. I took it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever, and I loved it for a long, long time until the more you grow, the more you realize, that was okay. It wasn't that good. We got better. We move on. But yeah, that was a long time ago.
So, what was it about that photo that now, when you look back, you think, not so good?
Well, because there was no, it was kind of predictable. There was no surprise. There was no breaking of the pattern. It was very patterny, and I loved that pattern when I was starting out, and you start to see light pattern things, shapes,
Hmm.
and that was drawing me to it. But now I realize that it needed some disruption to make it interesting. Otherwise, it's too predictable. It's just too easy.
Yeah, it's just how we all start. Yeah, I get that. At this point, were you already interested in photography, or did you have a camera? You took the picture, and then once you saw it, you thought, "Wait, there's something here."
I think at that point I was maybe taking a class at the university, maybe a summer night class, and I was using my camera and I was trying to get into the school publications, maybe working for the school newspaper or the yearbook or any other smaller publications that was ran by the school, and I was just shooting a lot. And at that point, I was just running around with the camera and developing my own black and white film and having fun with just learning and discovering photography.
I think we know. I think back to when I was learning photography, and there was this time where it was like everything that you did was brand new, and it was so exciting to just go out and shoot every day. But then we get to a point to where I don't want to say that we hit a plateau, but we face maybe our first struggle. What was the hardest thing for you in the beginning, from a photography standpoint, to learn or to understand about photography?
What was the struggle was to stand out. The struggle was to keep producing, to keep them coming, to always um, make things that are not the same as before. So I think that was something that we learned when we first do it. We were happy that we got it, and then after a few months, maybe you're like, well, we got it. So now we have to produce something new, or we have to shoot the same thing from a different viewpoint, or to strive to make something that's a little bit not the same as what we did always or what we did before.
So how do you overcome that?
And that's part of the fun. That's part of the challenge, but that's also the fun is that you do dig deep, or you learn to expand your awareness. You learn to expand your artistic awareness, so that you are not stuck where you are artistically or emotionally or visually, right? So you're not stuck in the same place for months. That you grow as a person, and that you grow as an artistic person or an emotional person, because a lot of wedding photography, I guess we'll get into that, is about emotional connection. So we have to grow emotionally also to do wedding photography. Maybe food photography, not so much, right? Anyway, but in wedding photography, yes. So we have to grow and we have to change and we have to evolve to get different perspectives, to approach life differently. Otherwise, we will be doing we'll be tempted to be doing the same stuff over and over again because we don't know how to do anything different, or we don't see anything different, we don't feel anything different, and we don't experience things with a different point of view if we don't change ourselves.
Did I hear? Do you went into your college newspaper? You were shooting for your college newspaper. Is that right?
I did. I was lucky enough to get to do it. Yes, and and I did that. I did the yearbook and I did a newspaper, and it was a great experience.
And then you went on to shoot for, is it the Dallas? Is it the Dallas Star newspaper as well?
Well, when I first, when I graduated from college with an engineering degree, um, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. So at that point, I tried really hard to get on to an internship with some newspapers around the country. 'Cause that's how you do it. As a student, you get out of college and you're trying to hook on to a summer internship and work at some newspaper, big or small. It's very competitive to get an internship. And then from there on, you can jump to another internship or maybe make connections or get kept on as, get a real job, get a newspaper job. And so at that point, I just started doing internships with some different newspapers and eventually landed in Dallas. Eventually, that was the biggest goal, my biggest job that I wanted was to work for the Dallas Morning News newspaper. But that took many years to get there, and eventually, yeah.
So, as a photojournalist, because I know that you spent years shooting weddings, but before that, being a photojournalist, like what did working for a newspaper, like a proper newspaper, teach you about capturing the story?
Working for the newspaper was a really good experience because the challenging assignments. So let's say I have a work week. I work 5 days a week. We all, we have normal work weeks, and we go in and we'll get assignments given to us. Here's your two assignments for the day. One might be a basketball game at night, and before that, you have to go photograph a portrait of a politician, or or maybe that's the plan, right? You have two assignments, maybe three, and you go and here's the story. Here's what this person did, and you have to do the picture. This person is a podcaster. This person is just won the podcaster of the year. Raymond Hatfield, right? He just won. He was just right. He won the Texas podcaster of the year. He works out of his office, and you find out all this information about Raymond, and you try to make a picture that has relevance to what you do, what Raymond does, who he is, where he works, what his environment's like, what he's like. So you don't just take him to the beach and do a sunset shot with Raymond because that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, right? So you don't do
Although I'm
that.
sure it would be lovely.
It would be lovely, but it doesn't fit the story. So you
Yes.
learn how to make pictures that fit the story. That's a portrait, right? Um, so maybe after you photograph Raymond, there's a fire, and you have to go to a fire. So like, okay, there's a fire over there. Go to it. So you go to it, and you put your portrait mindset away. You get your long lens out. You show whatever you need, and you can't get close. So you got to put your spot news mindset on and learn how to negotiate your way into somebody's balcony so you can shoot down on the fire. Maybe you want to talk to some people who's been affected by the fire. Just make pictures that show the effects of what's going on. It's big flames. Maybe you want to shoot the big flames because it's a big deal. Maybe it's the aftermath and you're like an hour late and you're like, okay, well, there's not much flame. So you're just going to shoot the remains of what's going on. Maybe there's people who were sad because of, affected by that. So you photograph something to bring back for the newspaper, and then you still have enough time to go to the ball game. You go to the ball game and you sit on the sidelines and sit on the floor and make some good basketball pictures, and that's your day. You learn. You have all these things thrown at you. You never know what you're going to do. You got to solve these problems right away. When you're doing it, that's fun, right? It's fun to not know, it's fun to have a diversity of assignments, and your day is like, I wouldn't say never the same, but your day is pretty different, and you have fun seeing the whole city, driving around, seeing what happens in real life in the whole city. And that was a great job. That's and that, and sometimes you get assign a long-term project. Say you have a project that you can check on. You're like, it's a long-term thing because when you have time, you like drop by, see this family, see how they're doing, take some pictures, things like that, and keep up with your projects. And sometimes you get to travel. Maybe there's political news, an election or something, and you know that it's going to happen, and you get ready and you fly to another place, solve those problems, try to make better pictures than your competitor, try to make good pictures so that the company will send you again. If you don't make good pictures, they're gonna send someone else, or
Of
they're gonna
course.
say, well, why did we go through all the expenses to send we when he can't even do better than what we get from the wire services. So
Hmm. Hmm.
right, maybe someone else can do better, maybe that's not his thing. And so we always have to work hard to justify our jobs, and but that's the fun, right? That's the fun. That's always the challenge. So just take that whole thing, all those skills we learn, all those problem solving skills, all the pressure, and just apply it to weddings. And there you go. That's wedding
Well,
photography right there.
that's quite a big jump right
It's
there.
just the same assignment over and over again, but it's anyway.
Well,
Yeah,
how did you get into weddings? Like when did that start? Why did you leave the newspaper and get into weddings?
I um so I was working in Dallas for maybe 5, 6 years, and it just kind of happened. Just met some people, and it's the same story with every wedding photographer. It just went to one wedding, and you're like, hey, this is fun, and people start asking me to shoot weddings, and I did. And the thing that I did was I connected with a local wedding photographer, um, FH Studio, Gary Donahue, and he was a great friend. I mean, we became friends, but I first started with him, and he took me into the studio and recommended me to his extra clients, and then we became partners later. So he gave me a really good start to jump in from photojournalist to become a wedding photographer, because for a while I did both, right? I still did my newspaper job, and then I book weddings at the same time. So it was just a slow transition, and after a couple of years, I just went full time and did weddings.
So when it comes to weddings, one thing that I always get interested in is obviously there's a subset of photographers who have never shot a wedding. So before they do so, they just like go on Google or Pinterest, like wedding photos. And then what you're going to see is just like the traditional head and shoulders portraits, those camera aware type photos. And then there's somebody like you who has years of experience in photography, albeit another genre being photojournalism,
Hmm.
and then you get into wedding photography. Did you just trust your skills as a photojournalist to capture a wedding, or did you try to fit into the quote unquote traditional wedding style in the beginning?
In the beginning, I did a lot of candid photos, a lot of photojournalism in my weddings. Because I that was my skill set, right? My So there's two things. There's candids and posing in wedding photography. So let's talk about candids. Documentary wedding photography. And I think that I thought that, yeah, I had skills. I can use my newspaper skills, go to a wedding and photograph the wedding like a newspaper story. And if there are important things that happen, I'll shoot it. If I'm pretty sure I know what important moments are during a wedding. I'm pretty sure um, I can kind of sense what I should shoot, and I would shoot it the way I want to shoot it. And I don't think the way I shot it was that weird. I don't think I'm super artistic, crazy, that I can shoot things and they would understand that's what it is. I can pretty much show people all the things that they do in a way that I think will be interesting to them. I'm pretty confident about that. And when it comes to posing, I just did the minimum. And I think that from the beginning, I communicated with my clients from way in the beginning. So this is back in 2001, 2002, 18, 20 years ago. I communicate we communicated that, hey, it's your coverage, it's going to be like 90% candid, and there are a few posing show photos, but that's not my strong suit. But they'll be in focus. They'll have good light, I hope, and they'll be normal. And they're not going to be the greatest poses ever. they're gonna be normal, and they're gonna be we're not spend a lot of time on them, and that's I made it very clear to my clients that's what we're doing, and we did it on film and went on from there.
Where do you think, in as far as photojournalism goes, where do you think the strongest skill set from photojournalism transferred over into wedding photography?
The strongest is feeling it, is being empathetic, is feeling along with what's going on in the scene, and being close and being physically close and emotionally close to photograph this family. That's what we do as photojournalists. We go to that fire, right? And we we if we can, if we are allowed to, we go in closer. We go in really close. We go into the fire if we can. If we can. But if we can't, and then we'll shoot wherever we are. But if we can, we'll be really close. We talk to people who are affected by that. We we photograph them and their sadness, which is sad, but we have to show, right? We have to show the world what's going on. So we have to photograph them really closely. And those are the things that we should do at weddings. That if you were not a photojournalist, um, maybe you wouldn't know that. You would just think, I can just stand here with my medium lens, and that looks really pretty, and I'm happy with that. So that's what I'm just saying. That's nothing wrong with that. But if you were not photojournalist, you wouldn't instinctively. Most people wouldn't. Most people would instinctively get in closer, photograph with their emotions. That's not something you do natural. People naturally do. Most people. That's something that I think that photojournalists learn, and photojournalism students learn when they're in school with their communities. But now it's been 20 years, so I think wedding photographers now have picked up on that knowledge, and I think that is part of the wedding photography now, which is great, which is kind of normal now for them
Mm-hmm.
to understand that the heart matters, not just beauty.
The heart matters, not just beauty. Oh, I love that. That's good.
Hmm.
Uh, so at what point, I guess, did fearless photography start? Because that has become pretty prolific in the world of weddings, as far as being named a fearless photographer. That's like a prestigious thing to put on your website. So tell me how all this came about.
Yeah, Fearless started about 10, 11 years ago when I would say I was at the peak of my career, and it was just, things was just happening. I was working a lot, teaching a lot of workshops, organizing workshops, and I had a lot of friends in the industry, many, many wedding photographer friends, and I really wanted to show off their work. I really wanted, because I knew that they were making pictures, awesome pictures all the time. We had forums, and at that time, Facebook was, becoming known, becoming used, being used more and more. But we had forums, and we were displaying photos, but when we displayed the photos on the forums, only we could see them. We're like, oh, that's awesome, man, that's awesome, but it's only us. And so I just want to say, like, the public should see this. We should organize them in a way that shows off these galleries. And I was um, very disappointed at the big wedding industry um, websites, that showcase photographers at that time. I didn't think that they were doing a good job. So I wanted to do. I thought I could do a good job, So I want to do it my way. So I want to put these galleries together and show the kind of photos that we think the clients would would love, or would be surprised to see, or would grow to love, or would like to discover. Um, yeah, not to name any names, but I didn't think that those gigantic, big national, international websites at that time were really showing these photos. They were showing, they were loving, like, a lot of details, like a lot of things that I didn't think were that important. So I also wanted to craft Fearless into something that shows off photography to the clients, and maybe they'll fall in love with the photography, and they want to get a photographer for their wedding. anyway, so that's the goal. That was the goal we started out with, and we want to continue that goal. Um, and one thing about Fearless is, honestly, it's it honors the photographers who do well. I mean, it's kind of competitive. It's kind of competitive, It's I think it's kind of easy to join Fearless, honestly, but once you get in, you have to earn your awards, and then you can rise to the top. So it's sort of it has its own ranking system that is it's gonna be tough. It's tough to get your photos selected for awards because your photos are evaluated, in a gigantic pool against world-class photographers. So it's kind of tough to be recognized as a top fearless photographer. That's what we've been doing for 10 years.
So if the types of photos that you didn't see as important, things like details and stuff like that, what was it that you did? What sorts of images did you want to showcase that you thought like this is the real meat of a wedding?
Yeah, we wanted to show. Well, okay, one thing that Fearless did was, we're not we don't have advertising, so we don't have um, an obligation to show a lot of details photos. We can just show photos that people, I think, love in the document, and it leans towards documentary, and so that's sort of been the kind of photos that most of our judges have been selecting as awards over the years. We have a fair amount of very artistic portrait photography, portrait wedding photography too. But most of the photos that I think our members excel in are emotional, real moments photography that happens without staging, without scripting, without arrangement, and those are the real moments of life at weddings.
Wow, yeah, I agree. As somebody who's been to a few weddings, that tends to be those moments, like those photos, those real and emotional moments are the ones that typically get the biggest response out of the client and people who are viewing the images. But I'm interested to hear from your standpoint if there was some sort of like, I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head. If there was some sort of like 3-step process for capturing real and emotional moments at a wedding that beginners could follow, like what would that look like?
Okay, okay. Hang on to that question. You can ask me in a minute, but I just want to clear. I just want to clarify one thing. It's that it's not that I think the moments are better, or they are more loved than the portraits. It's just that I think that there are clients who love both, right? So we
Yes.
want to give clients some choices. So if a client, mathematically, if a client love 75% portraits and 25% candids, they can choose photographer. Realistically, they can evaluate and choose photographers who have sort of the same approach. Or if they like 90% photojournalistic and 10% portraits, hopefully, I don't know, through Fearless or some other websites, they can correctly evaluate their photographer to give them that mix or to give them that approach, so they can have the right photographer for their needs. So if they love portraits, they should hire a photographer who's really good at portraits, or a
Of
really good
course.
photographer. Yeah. So we want to make that clear, like through our galleries, through our profiles, that this photographer is really good at this or that too. Okay, so ask me your question again. Sorry.
You said that some of your favorite photos were those real and emotion driven type
Hmm.
moments. So, if there were some sort of like 3-step process for capturing more real and emotion driven moments that like a beginner could follow, what would those 3 steps be?
Well, one is you have to recognize, you have to follow along with your heart. So you have to feel along with what the scene, what the clients are feeling. So you have to be cognizant of the emotions that are happening. So so that you feel like they're really happy, or this is really fun, or they're really nervous, or you know, this is really hot. This wedding is,
That happens a lot in Texas, I'm
right,
sure too.
right, yeah. I was just like, oh, this is really, or you just have to feel like mom is loving this, dad is loving this, and your emotion is in tune, and then you want to get away, you want to find a way to transfer this. So you want to transfer this feeling to your photos. So so that's one, two. So you want to transfer it, right? So at the same time, you have to sort of be confident that even though you're a wedding photographer, this may not be a time for beauty photos. This is an emotional photo. So you have to put all your beauty requirements, all your trained beauty thought. That doesn't make sense. What is it? All your pre-programmed notions about wedding photography, all your beauty nagging at you. It's like, oh, well, wedding photography should be beautiful. Wedding photography, should be beautiful. Well, this is not the time to make that beauty photo. There's going to be plenty of time later in the sunset. Save those beauty photos for the sunset. This is the time we make the emotional photo. And so you got to go all in with tuning in to 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 make that photo. And I think that's, so you have to recognize what's going on, and then you have to physically be in there. And that's not an easy thing for a lot of people. Physically be in there and be committed to photographing this thing, this moment with good light, good composition, with all the photographic skills too, So don't those skills are important always. But yeah, so hope
Perfect.
I answered your
Yeah,
question.
no, absolutely it does. Now you said that obviously getting in there and getting close to the emotion is a hard thing for a lot of photographers, and I've heard that from a lot of them. In what ways can we train ourselves to better um, adapt to, or I guess just train ourselves to get better and get closer to those emotional moments?
You have to practice, right? You have to practice the doing it and get better. And I think that one thing that prompts us to do something is that we see the value in the results, right? If we think, if as photographer, if we agree that being closer is worth the effort, worth the training, worth the emotional disturbance of being close, if the pictures are worth it to us and to the clients, and then it's worth trying and doing and working at it. And so what was the question? So yeah,
I
right.
guess tips
So
on actually getting closer. Yeah.
yeah, so you have to go through the discomfort of your own discomfort of I don't like being here, or this is weird, or this is strange. But you know what? It's gonna be worth it. But it's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
worth it, right? And then you have to rely on your people skills to make people comfortable with you. And your people skills are different from mine. Everyone's people skills are different. So you have to learn how to use your own people skills. Like I can't tell you what to say because that's not natural coming out of you.
Yeah.
Because I might use my own kind of humor because my dynamics of being in a crowd, being in an intimate situation is different from yours. People, but you have to be trusted, right? You have to be allowed to be there. So my way of earning that trust is different from yours. The only thing we have in common is like we're both males, and right. So everyone brings a different dynamics to the scene, right? So photographers have to learn how to and practice how to get trusted and how to deal with things for, for them to be allowed to be accepted to be trusted into this intimate wedding, this intimate family situation. Same as photojournalism. They have to be trusted to be in this intimate scene so that they can make pictures effectively work. So that takes skills, that takes practice, that takes guidance. It's not easy for many people. It's not easy, but I've seen in photojournalism, I've seen people, I've seen great photographers of all demographics, of all shapes and sizes, of all kinds who are able to earn trust because they have to, because that's part of their job. Reporters too, and they have to earn trust, and they do it very well because they've been doing it a lot. They've been practicing it a lot. They've been working at it a lot, and sometimes they fail. Sometimes they say the wrong thing. Sometimes they don't get accepted, but they they find ways to make it to be successful most of the time. And wedding photography is a little bit easier because you are already kind of you're already hired, so there's ways for you to it's easier. Yeah. So get trusted, put your discomfort, work with your own discomfort, and it's like, and I guess for some people, it may not be worth it. And they're like, you know what, the pictures I'm making, I don't really need to. This is too hard for me. After 10 years, I still can't get it. And maybe that's just the way it is. And they can do another photography their own way. But as far as beginners, people starting out, we say give it a try, right? Give it a good try. Let's work at it. And people have done it before. If you can't do it, then you can't do it. But you don't know until you try.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sure you've seen them too on Facebook. There's little videos that go around of maybe a wedding photographer doing like some crazy jumps and like twists and like pulling out the camera and take a few shots at a wedding. And I think to myself, like, that is not me. Like, I'm not going to do that at all. I'm not going to be doing somersaults and then trying to, surprise the couple by taking photos of them. But for them, or for that photographer, like, that works, and that's,
Hmm.
I suppose, his way or their way of building trust and getting the types of photos that they need. But what is it? Not, but causation is not correlation, or correlation is not. Obviously, the way that they do it does not mean that it's going to work for everybody else. So I appreciate you sharing that. Like, I can't tell you what to say because it's going to be different for me than it is for you. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Um,
Yeah, let's. Oh, do we have time? Let's think about it. So, if it, I just, it's another thing that maybe relate to this is like, sometimes we think that's not us, and well, sometimes we have a choice. We don't need to do it, right? Like, I'm fine here. I don't need to do that. Like, that's not me. That's not me. I don't have to do it. You do it. That's not me, right?
mhm.
Because I don't want that way. So, but if you had to, Raymond, and it's not you, you can work towards it. It doesn't mean that you cut it off, right? So, for
Right.
example, I was never a runner. I was never a runner, right? I sucked. I couldn't even run, let's say, one loop around the track, right? 1/4 of a mile without stopping, right? Because I was never a runner. That's not me. That's not me, right? So what would make me run? So I try to. So let's say I'm proud of myself. I can do 2.5 miles of my best highest. I can normally do 1 mile. I'm pretty happy with that, right? But I try, right? I try. So what would get me to change my mindset from that's not me to doing something? It's
Eh,
the benefits,
yes.
the results. So it's for my health, right? So for my health, I'm getting old, right? So so I need exercise to stay alive longer. I don't know. I don't want a heart problems or whatever. So I have to get out there, and do this. So yeah. So it's not me, but if I find that it's something that has good results, benefits that I want to, it's possible that I can ease myself into it. So.
I appreciate you clarifying that because, yeah, I could see how what I said there could be easily misconstrued as like, if at first you don't think it's the right decision, then just don't do it. So, when I think of fearless photography. I often think of, as you said earlier, those moment driven moments. I think very creative photos, and anybody who hasn't been to the website already definitely needs to just see the collection of work from all sorts of photographers. But I think of heavy use of foreground, maybe color manipulation with flash, just like really creative things. And it gets me like really excited before I go shoot a wedding because it just pumps me up full of beautiful creative ideas. But then oftentimes I'll get to a wedding and part of it just feels like a normal day, Maybe somebody's in a bad mood. The best man forgot the rings at home. They got to go back. There's like just some confusion going on. And then it just feels like there's like a small opportunity to really be able to try and capture something creative. So I guess my question here for you is, for you, what's the balance between creating art and simply documenting what's happening during the day? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, right. Ultimately, a wedding is one. I'm use an analogy. The wedding is one game. It's one basketball game. It's one football game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, yeah, if you just have a bad game, if that's not your day, and things are overwhelming you, and I'm gonna say you, I mean you in general,
Yeah.
me, right? If you have a bad day and things are overwhelming you, you can't solve it, and you just do the minimum, and you're like, "Oh, I'm glad that's done with." That's fine. I mean, that can happen, right? So how many times a year you think that you want to let that happen? If you have 26 weddings a year, how many times would you let yourself have a bad game
Oh,
with all the
as few as
excuses?
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, like two, one,
Sure. Yeah.
one, right? Of course, you don't tell your clients that; they'll never know. But that's the one that you like. Okay, that's my bad game of the year. If you have five, if you have 10 bad weddings, bad games, then you got a problem that you need to solve, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Then you need to work, right? You need to get back on track. Yeah, see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So while it's okay to understand that things may happen beyond your control, you are under obligation to solve those problems, to solve all kinds of problems, so that you don't have a bad game. You need to overcome the best you can. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So your question is, when when are you creative, and when are you, say, not creative, right?
Yeah. Simply just documenting the day.
Yeah. Simply documenting a day does not mean that you're not being creative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You are documenting a day, but you are doing it in the most effective way possible. So maybe simply document a day, again, an analogy is just maybe scoring a layup, right?
Yeah.
It's a very simple play, right? And then maybe sometimes when things are right, you can do the alley oop, you can do the dunk,
Yeah.
you can be showy. You're like, hey, this is the time, right? So it just depends on if you want to just quietly score, or if you want to be a showboat and have some fun, do some highlights, whatever. Or maybe you think about what your client's needs are. So you have this all these, like, this consideration. You're like, hey, you know what? Yeah. So you decide. You decide when to do what, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What
So
about
another
go on?
so when you're documenting a wedding, when you're photographing a wedding, it's one of the goal is to be effective, to have the photographs be strong and communicate clearly what's going on. Like
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to do now with you, I'm trying to communicate clearly. Like I'm not trying to be fancy and sing and rap and rhyme, speak French, dance.
This
Like I'm not
should be
trying
a
to
whole
show
nother
off,
podcast
right?
episode.
Exactly. I'm not trying to be creative. Like I'm not entertaining. I'm just trying to get the ideas across. And sometimes And most of the weddings, that's what you're doing. You're getting the ideas across, and you're doing a good job. Doesn't mean you're doing badly. Doesn't mean your picture out of focus. Doesn't mean you use bad lighting. Doesn't mean you get caught in the wrong position. It means you're doing a lot of things right. But it also means that it's the photographs are not appreciated because somebody looks at it and go, "Wow, what crazy colors." They look at it and they go, "Wow, what a moment." Like I really get that. See, see that there's a two effects that a photo can have. So at some point, yeah, you want to throw some colors at them and you want to do some crazy lighting and you want to wow people. And at some point, you just want to let the emotion hit them. Okay.
So when it comes to, okay, so I understand that like as a photographer, we have this is pretty subjective. A lot of it is our own decision. But when it comes to things like, what am I trying to ask here? There's the ceremony. We know what's going to happen at every ceremony, and I've heard from some photographers, they're like, I don't do anything special there in the ceremony. Like that's the bread and butter. I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to get the photo, that we need, and then we're going to get out. But then when we do portraits, that's when it's time to get, I guess, more creative. Spend more time on composition and whatnot. Do you have any tricks or tips for when there is a quote unquote, I don't want to say boring moment because a ceremony is not a boring thing, but when there's a traditional thing going on, to put a special spin on it?
It's when you ask yourself, it's when I ask myself, can I, is this the best I can do? Is this really the best I can do? Is this it? Is this it? Is there a better angle here? Can I be someplace else to shoot this thing? Um, if I move, what would happen? Um, what would it take? What would it take for me to get there? Like to ask permission or to be there? What would it take? Do I want to go through the trouble? Is it worth it? So I do all these calculations, right? Do I have enough time to do that and then come back and get the recession also?
Mm-hmm.
If I have a second photographer, then it makes it easier, right? Then I can do the math for two people. If I let my photographer stay here, I can go here, there. So it helps. It helps to have more photographers working, so that I can do more things. So when I was working as a foreign journalist, all right, Raymond, I would go to a news event, right? I'm not the only photographer there. My competition is there, right? Two or three photographers from different newspapers. It may be the Pope visiting St. Louis, and then there'd be photographers all over the world, right? So if I'm shooting something and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get it, and I know it's boring, but you know what? It's sure enough, somebody when I come back to the office, somebody's gonna have a killer, awesome photo that's gonna kick my ass, right? And then my boss is gonna look at me and go, "What were you?" I'm like, "I don't know. I was doing this shot because I was thought it was shot was." They're like, right? My bosses were tough, and I guess they pushed me that way. They're like, they got it. What was your excuse?
Yeah.
Maybe I had an excuse. Maybe like, I forgot my ladder in the car. I didn't have a ladder. Why didn't you have a ladder? I don't know. So after a while, I brought a ladder to everywhere, right? So you learn. So yeah, so I always ask myself, if I go to a wedding, I know I'm the only photographer there, but I'm always asking myself, they pay me a lot of money or they chose me, I have responsibility. Am I doing something worthy of them, worthy of their trust, worthy of their investment in me? I'm always pushing myself like that. And I that's just me because for what I went through, I'm always thinking, is this the best? Why am I tired? Am I late? Why am I am I tired? Why am I not thinking fresh here? Why am I not well, and maybe sometimes you do the normal things, and maybe sometimes you strive a little bit harder, and you have to decide when those things are.
So I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think of. I feel like my head is going in a million different places. I'm thinking about the weddings that I've been to and the
That's right.
situations that I've been
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this is this is a really interesting concept because I guess it's not. Obviously, you want to always try to do better. That's always going to be the goal.
Mm-hmm.
But because I know that you've hosted, many workshops with other photographers, often new photographers, photographers who want to capture those more emotion-driven moments. Where do you think their struggles are? Like when you look at their images and try to help them get to where you are, what do you think that they're missing in their photography?
In general, I I think many photographers who photograph weddings are still very much you know with the mindset that weddings are about beautiful people in beautiful places,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow that that sort of colors everything they do. So they just need to put that aside. So they need to, I guess. So that's the whole thing about fearless, right? Fearless is about putting things aside and committing yourself to doing something, and not worry about not getting enough beauty photos, because that time will come and you will please your clients. If your clients are in tune with what you do, if your clients want to, so the hardest thing is not committing to it. I think it's not committing to it and it letting them and let sort of holding themselves back. People are holding themselves back because they make up reasons. And I don't want to say everyone does this, but I think that's why I see is like when we don't want to do something again, we say the client doesn't want that. The client doesn't want that photo. Um, I don't want it, or I can't do it, or I don't have to. Whatever. We rationalize what we don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are not committed 100%, then they're very good at rationalizing and coming up with reasons why they can't commit to it.
So a lot of it is you think that a lot of it is perhaps mental block rather than education or inspiration. Does that make sense?
A lot of it, there's equal parts on everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why photography is so interesting, right? It's not just learning how to use the camera. I'm just now we are talking about sort of more advanced, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at first, at first, and I want to use another analogy on you, right? So I have a lot of these. Um, when you play tennis, when you learn how to play tennis, at first, all you're learning is just to hit the ball across the net
Mm-hmm.
without going out of bounds, right? You just want to run to the ball and hit a forehand or a backhand, put the ball back in play. That's all you're doing. So that's in the beginning, you want to get good at that. So meaning that in photography, in the beginning, you just want to make good photos. You just want to make good photos of things you want to shoot. You want to make clear, sharp, good light photos, photos that shows what you want to show. And then once you get good at it, you begin to play competitively, and now you begin to spin the ball. You're beginning to place the ball. You're beginning to understand your opponent's weaknesses and strengths, and you're beginning to play the game. So now you start to think more about what you want to do with all your skills that you have. So at the beginning, you're just making good pictures, right? So for this, if I have a crew of photographers, right? If I have crew photographers and we cover the wedding, and I have one photographer dedicated to photographing the ceremony, and I keep that photographer focused, and their job is to photograph the ceremony with me, and they don't have to worry about beauty photos. They don't have to worry about the dancing photos. They don't have to worry about details. Their job is to focus on this thing. I think that if you have that mindset, if that photographer probably do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
because they don't have to worry about all these things, right? They don't have to. They fearless. They're like, hey, that's not my problem. My job right now, we told me, is to photograph this ceremony, right? And they don't have any fears about anything else happening in the wedding. So if we have all have that mindset, if we can I don't know, go to a wedding and focus on what we're doing at one time and not worried or not be concerned about what we're doing other times. Not I'm not saying be oblivious, but I'm saying focus on what we're doing here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. This this is a fun conversation. I'll tell you
No,
what.
it's
Like,
good. I'm glad.
very rarely, I guess I hate to say very rarely am I challenged because that sounds ridiculous, but I guess very rarely is my take on wedding photography put into, like, now I'm questioning a lot of the decisions that I make at weddings because I know that there's, unfortunately, like, I'll admit that there have been weddings where I've just had to phone it in, where it just seemed like nothing was working, and I just again, I could come up with a million excuses, but talking with you, I love this. Like, no, that's my fault. This is 100% my fault. And that I need to do better. And just like your website, just with seeing all of the other photographers there inspires me to take better photos. This conversation has inspired me to take more ownership over the bad photos that I take. So I appreciate that. Have you ever had a Have you ever had a situation where you've been too fearless in a photo that you took, where it just totally fell flat on its face? You tried something big and it did not work.
I think we do. Yes, I mean, definitely things don't work all the time, right? And that's the thing about making mistakes. We can't guarantee our successes. Sometimes, you just you know, right? Things don't. You have to try it, right? So yeah. So I say there's the many shots that didn't come out as well as I wanted to. Many many times when I've misread situations, maybe I've been too close, something, or maybe I didn't understand something, or maybe I didn't have the trust that I needed with everyone. So sometimes I'm not as effective as I wanted to be. Yeah. So what do we do, when something like that happens? We have to be, what do you do? Again, athletes, what do they do when they don't succeed? They make a bad play or something.
Try
I
again.
think they learn to put it aside, right?
Hmm.
They've learned to to make a blunder or something. They're like, even the toughest, like the kicker who missed that kick, right? And then the game goes overtime and he's got to make that kick again, right? So it's like, how much that weighing on him, right? So hopefully professional athletes are trained to treat everything as a new beginning or whatever. They put it, put it aside, right? So yeah. So but yeah, have to try, and you have to try, and if it doesn't work, maybe there's a time you can evaluate later. Like maybe after the wedding, you start thinking back about, okay, you know what? When I think back, maybe this is a good time to learn, good time to assess how I'm doing things. Okay, okay, um, yeah, maybe I can reassess. But you got to go into a wedding, and you have to know that at least five things are going to go wrong. And
At
when they go
least.
wrong, yeah, you just check out the list. You're like, hey, that's number one. That's number two. That's number three. So you're not surprised. You're not like, oh my God, oh no, I thought I have a perfect wedding today. You don't. You never do. So you're like, hey, so five people is going to yell at you, right? Five people are going to five people are going to say, get out of here. I don't want you here. Okay, fine, fine. You, you know. But if you get 10, then maybe that's the problem. Maybe
Yeah.
you should wear better deodorant. Okay. But you gotta know that a certain number of things gonna happen. Certain number of mistakes gonna be made. Certain number of successes gonna be made. Certain number of mistakes gonna be made. You're gonna win a lot. You're gonna lose a lot. In the end, your clients will always be happy because you can always deliver, right? Because our clients are pretty easy to please. Our clients are, um, you know, even on our lowest day, I want to say, even on our toughest day, things are going wrong. We can still make pictures that are that are pretty good, that are good professional wedding photography that our clients will be happy with. Um, so would hopefully wouldn't we're not gonna ever dip below that. We're always gonna have a like you and all your interviews. Even on your worst days, you're gonna have pretty decent interviews. You'll be okay. You're not gonna have the great interview sometimes, but your minimum is pretty good. And yeah, so
Well, I'm happy to say that this is not going to be one of those interviews. This is definitely going to be one of the most
hey,
memorable ones. This is going to be one where I know I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this before every wedding, just as an audio kick in the butt that I need to own up to everything that I'm gonna do on a wedding day.
exactly.
And just
That's
remember,
the kick in the butt is the challenge is where the fun is, right? If you
yeah,
go to a wedding and you're not being challenged, that's no fun. That I mean, make money, great, but it's not that fun. It's fun. It's fun when things are thrown at you. It may not seem like fun, but that's when, and that's why we make the big bucks, right? That's why wedding photographers are paid so much. It's when these things are thrown at us and we can handle them and we can overcome them. Let's say that Uncle Bob can't, right? But we can
of
because we have
course.
tools, we have flashes, we have assistants, we have skills, we have experience that we can draw on to overcome situations. And that's why we're the pros, and that's why we get paid a lot. Is for our ability to deal with these things when they happen. Hopefully, they don't happen a lot, but when it comes, we're the pros, and and that makes each day, each wedding very tiring, but also very satisfying, very fun. Not a boring job at all, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll know that at least 5 things will go wrong at a wedding every
Totally.
day. I'm gonna start writing like a tally on my hand just as so that I can remind myself, like, hey, only 3 things went bad today. This was a fantastic
A-
wedding day. I
And
like that.
but you can even reward yourself. You can even say everything that goes wrong, you get a reward. You reward yourself. Like, right? Now you
Okay.
welcome it. You're like, hey, it's wrong. Cool. I get an extra, I don't know, whatever you want to get. Treat. You get extra treat, right? You give
Yeah.
yourself a treat, right? So now when things go wrong, you're like, ha ha, that's my treat right there. Boom.
That's awesome. That is again, that's such a great outlook on a wedding day because, as you know, I mean, things can just go wrong, and sometimes you feel like sometimes I don't want to say that you feel responsible, but you feel responsible to be comforting or reassuring or try to fix the situation because at many weddings, especially for new photographers, like you're the only professional who's been to other weddings, so you're kind of looked at as the professional there. So that is yeah, treat yourself. If something goes wrong, treat yourself. I love that. That's gonna be great. Well, uh, I know that we are at the end of our time here. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast and again just sharing your wealth of information and knowledge. Can you let the listeners know where they can find out more about you and what you offer online?
Yes. Yes. The website is fearlessphotographers.com. And that's why I am these days. So I hope you guys will come and see the work of many photographers around the world and enjoy wedding photography. We, featured outstanding wedding photography awards. And what else can I say? Whenever we have permission to do in-person workshops again, we will. I would love, I love doing workshops. I love teaching, but we also feature workshops of many of our members too. So you can find workshops offerings by our members plus online courses, things like that. So the community celebrates amazing wedding photography and hopefully of all kinds, but not of all kinds, but as many as we can, and mostly focus on documentary. And there's a lot of also a lot of creative portrait wedding photography on there too. So.
Wonderful. Again, well, I got to say thank you again for coming on the show, and I really look forward to keeping up with you in the future and everything that Fearless has coming our way.
It's a pleasure to talk with you, Raymond. It's been fun. Thank you.
The story here, the story my biggest takeaway was the story. If if you're new to photography, sometimes as a wedding photographer, you feel like you're just trying to survive because you're being thrown into this jungle, right? You don't know anybody at this wedding, or maybe you know one person, maybe it was a friend's wedding, whatever it is, but essentially you are the outcast, right? And at the same time you're also looked at as the professional, but you're new to this, and it's not a very comfortable situation to be in. So you're just trying to survive. So you just get the photos, make sure that they're properly exposed, that there's some sort of intentional composition done to them, and almost one of the last things that you're thinking about doing is creating creative images, But as you keep going, as you get better, you are going to do that through story. That's how you do it. And the best way to do that, as we shared, is to get closer. You've heard me say it before on the podcast. If you ever think that you're close enough, take one step closer. And to hear, we validate that today was so awesome. And also, I am 100% adopting that, the five things will go wrong mindset. And I'm going to apply that to my next wedding. That makes it so much easier, to assume that things are going to go wrong, and then less things go wrong makes you feel like you win the day, versus assume that it's going to be a perfect wedding day and then one thing goes wrong, which feels like a total loss. So I'm totally adopting that. I want to know what your biggest takeaway for this episode was. Feel free to come on in and join the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook community. Let me know. What was it? What are you taking away from this that you are going to apply to your photography? Really excited for this one. All right, that is it for this week. Until next week, I want you to get out. I want you to shoot. Shoot as much as you can. I want you to stay safe. And that's it. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.
Wedding photography is so big that it's hard to keep it, like, talk about it all, right? It's the things that we teach, or we stress, or the things that needs to be discussed is so much. It's so much, and the game is so vast, but it's fun to for me to be able to explain what's important to me, and what's important to what I think is, I don't know, good practices. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, where do you think we need to have more conversations about wedding photography?
Wedding photography, honestly, so wedding photography, I think, is always been is being, um just the is being pushed, is being promoted, towards beauty, towards being beautiful. Be in the days of Instagram and showing off social media, is showing off the beautiful wedding is just so prevalent. It's so important to many couples, to many, I don't know, vendors, to just there's so much a big emphasis on beautiful wedding photos. That is, I think it's just been a struggle for documentary wedding photography to, I don't know, it's not a battle, but sometimes people forget that the weddings are, emotional family events that are valuable to remember, because they're so caught up in the beauty planning, and the photographers are, like, I guess that's all they care about. That's all they think, that the wedding is just a beautiful fashion shoot,
Mm-hmm.
and so so I think that's the thing that is that's going on in the industry, that it's, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that's the way the world is, but I think that's where it's going. So for people who love documentary photography, who, I think it's a tough road to find clients, maybe, and to explain it to clients, and to make a to show clients good photos, good documentary photos that the clients can fall in love with. So I guess that's one goal of Fearless too, is to show pictures, show good pictures, so that the client will say, "Wow, I didn't know that was possible," or "Oh, these are good. These are good too, right? These are good
Yeah.
too. I love these also." Or, "Oh, so they can see what else they can have at their weddings."
Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually thought about that exact thing because it's there are multiple different genres of photography. You know, some are documentary, some are more traditional, I guess you could say, beauty driven. And it always seems to me like in the world of photography, like through a photographer's eyes, it seems like the documentary wedding photographers are the stars in the industry. Like we as photographers understand that the work that they do is so much harder than learning how to say, you know, turn your hip, turn your chin, tilt down, give a big smile, you know what I mean? Like have it more formulaic, but yet from the consumer side, say Pinterest or Google or wherever you're going to look, those are the images that get displayed the most. So I don't know if that is just people think that that's what they want because that's the majority of what they see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I I don't think that beauty photography is easier when it's done well.
Right.
I think posing is super hard I think posing people effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Portraits are hard. I think many photographers need to learn how to do portraits better. Many documentary wedding photographers
Oh,
need
sure.
to improve their portrait skills. They can't just get by. They want to compete. They should up both levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So I don't think I'm putting down portrait photography or beauty photography.
Right.
It's just that people people see it, like you said, they see it and they value it, right? And because when your friend has a wedding and they just ooh and ah over the dress, they ooh and ah over the decor or the location, right? And they ooh and ah over how beautiful, because beauty photography is sort of very tied in with beauty, right? Because we want to capture the beauty, right? We want to save the beauty. We want to save that photography. Give anyone a camera and they take pictures of the most beautiful things. Well, most people do, right? Most people just go for something beautiful, right?
Yes.
Like beautiful light, beautiful people, right? So yeah, so people think that. So people hire a photographer to save their beauty, to capture their beauty for many years to come. Fine, that's
Mm.
great, but that's what wedding photography has been for hundreds of years or 100 years. That's what wedding photography has always been, capturing beauty. We just want to show that there's other things you can capture with the camera too that are that that are worth saving. So we just want to tell people that, show people that
Yeah.
it's not, yeah, just to show them the options, that there are things that they may want to have too, or have both. Have a photographer who's really good at moments and really good at posing too. And there are quite a few photographers who are really excellent at both, who are at the top of the wedding photography business, I think.